John Paulsen, 4 for 4. You got the 4 for 4 shirt. I got the Breakout Finder shirt. We're doing great.
We're company men.
Fantasy football season is here. It's here right now. We are in it. This is August 27th. This is when we like to have you on. You've dialed in your season rankings. You've got this all. You've done a lot of different drafts. Dialed. Everything dialed. John Paulsen dialed in. This is the good life right here.
I'm in the mind of Mansion. It's a scary place sometimes, but I'm here.
I just had to check my mic to make sure it was on. Is this on?
I didn't know if you wanted me to.
Is this on,
respond.
everybody? Is this on? So okay, so you're like head analyst over there at 4 for 4, one of the best fantasy rankers in the world. Talk to us about what you got going on over there, what you got for content, so people can go grab it.
Yeah, I've released my infamous draft day strategy article a couple weeks ago. Also, Paulsen's players, the round by round targets, kind of a draft plan in that as well. And everybody loves the table at the bottom of strategy with my targets per round or by round.
Targets
and also
by round.
Yeah. Also did positional articles for the top 4 positions, of course, and right now I'm just kind of honing in the draft rankings with all the cuts happening and trying to get those dialed in before this weekend. I know there's a lot of drafts going on this week and this weekend, so I want to have that buttoned up before I get into week 1 projections over the weekend.
I've talked to so many people that have their draft this weekend. I mean, this is one of those weekends, man. I can't remember ever talking to this many people just out and about, right? On the soccer pitch, at the gym, right? I mean, fantasy football, I mean, it is, thriving. And especially with these kids, like these college kids, setting up their fraternity has a draft. I mean, it's incredible. I love it. I love it so much. So when we're looking at these preseason injuries, they're not all minor, like the coaches are saying. These players all aren't just going to be fine for week 1, like the coaches are saying. Although some of them are returning to practice. Great to see Jahmyr Gibbs return to practice. That's always great. But is there a minor injury, in quotes, that you think is actually not that minor that you're worried about?
I'm a little... I mean, I don't know how concerning it is because he's not super fantasy relevant, but it changes who maybe the attrition back is in Green Bay because A.J. Dillon's got this stinger and they are seeking more information. It sounds like he's had a pretty good camp and was kind of lined up to be the RB2, but he's got this neck stinger thing, and necks are always a little worrisome because Marshawn Lloyd he's going to miss the first 4 weeks. So it does affect like maybe who you're taking there in the final rounds as an attrition pick. And then the other one that I'm just a little worried about Justin Herbert in general. I mean, I know he's got this foot injury. He's back at practice. He's probably going to play through this plantar fasciitis and be okay. But it could pop up again. And I worry a little bit about, he wasn't that great fantasy wise last year. And that was with Kellen Moore, the OC. The passing game was okay. It wasn't what we're used to from him from his first couple seasons in terms of his fantasy production. And now he's got a foot injury, and is he going to run as much, and how much are they going to run the ball or try to run the ball? So I'm just a little worried about Justin Herbert in general. And then I think this foot injury is another thing that could pop up midseason that might cause more problems for him.
Josh Jacobs going at, pick 40 in the FFPC, closer to pick 50 on Underdog, though he's up 4 slots on Underdog in the Best Ball Mania, which is amazing for a running back in the dead zone to be up like that. But that's just, I think that there's something there with Josh Jacobs. You've been drafting Josh Jacobs?
Not really. When I get into that like 4th, after that first tier running backs after Pacheco, I'm just kind of avoiding. I think now I might be a little more willing to nab Jacobs given what's going on behind him. I think if everybody was healthy, I'd be fairly concerned that it's a committee or he's just a 55%, 60% back as opposed to 65, 70% is what you want out of your RB1s at least if you're going to draft them in the first 3 or 4 rounds.
I'm not as concerned as others about like a lack of efficiency. The guy's still just 26 years old. Yes, he has a lot of mileage, but last year he faced the maximum number of defenders in the box. On Player Profiler, 7.2 average defenders in the box was number one among qualified running backs. What I look at is the fact that this guy's 2 years with 50-plus receptions. And, of course, when they stack the box against him, his yards per carry dipped down to 4.0. Who was going to get like a better than 4.0 yards per carry on the Raiders last year? Someone explain this to me. Like, how is that, or it dipped to 3.5, right? Okay, so it dipped to 3.5. Before that, again, 50-plus receptions per year. So I think he bounces back to 15-plus fantasy points per game. He's going to be getting the goal line carries. Don't we think this offense is going to score a lot of points?
Yeah, I think it's a matter of how much they want to rotate him out. I don't know that it's going to happen a whole lot with Dillon dinged up and Lloyd out. I will say that Zamir White did average 4.3 yards per carry last year on the Raiders. Just wanted to mention that.
But he wasn't facing as many defenders in the box.
What was his number?
He's a little more explosive, right? He's a little more explosive, and it was also a small sample.
Juice.
But I mean, the idea that Josh Jacobs at 26 is dust, I just don't. That's not right. That's
wasn't an argument against Josh Jacobs. I just wanted to throw a Zamir White wrench at you.
Well, you do like Zamir White, right?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I think you get into that 6-7 range. The preseason usage is the only like red flag for me, really, because I think if you're in that range and you're looking at a guy who's going to get like 300 touches, like there's a lot of dudes in that 5 to 7 range that are high touch floor type guys. I don't think Alexander Mattison is going to significantly eat into his Zamir White's workload. I think maybe the question is how competitive can the Raiders be? And I think they're going to be very stubborn about running the ball, and I think he's better than what some folks are giving him credit for. I mean, he's not some superstar, but when he was the lead back there towards the end of the season, he had several really good games. Rushing grades were top third during that span. Caught the ball a little bit. Offensive line's probably better than people give it credit for. So if they're stubborn and the defense is decent, which it was last year, kind of underrated defense, then I think Zamir White can certainly deliver RB2 numbers. But again, he's playing in the third quarter of some preseason game. It is a bit alarming.
So Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, depending on where you look at, casual fantasy leagues, these guys are starting to creep into the first round. Now, not in high stakes necessarily, not certainly in best ball, but in some formats, you're starting to see first round Saquon, first round Jonathan Taylor, and even some first round Derrick Henry. And to me, it makes sense. Like, these guys, all three have flopped the nuts situation that we've always dreamed for them. There's no competition for touches now in Indianapolis. You have Anthony Richardson freezing linebackers, opening up the widest possible running lanes for the best offensive line that Jonathan Taylor's ever had. Derrick Henry has the best situation he's ever had with a mobile quarterback, offensive line, best offense he's ever operated in. Same with Saquon Barkley. These are all super stud running backs. Derrick Henry still has some tread left on the tire at age 30 because he wasn't used early in his career. Same with Barkley. He's the similar age to Josh Jacobs. And Jonathan Taylor is younger than both of them. So a couple of these guys were 101 picks in recent years. So talk to us about these veteran running backs, these proper bell cows. Did they belong in the late first round? Are you drafting Derrick Henry in the second round? What are you thinking?
Well, I have Henry over Taylor and Barkley.
This is what I'm saying.
This
is why I wanted to ask you this question.
I think Taylor I've bumped up a little bit as time has gone on. I think the concern with both Taylor and Barkley is, number one, goal line usage with Richardson and Jalen Hurts. I'm not nearly as worried about Lamar Jackson vulturing rushing touchdowns. They don't run him as much around the goal line as Hurts and Richardson have. Now, Richardson's sample's small. I mean, he only played 2.6 games or something when you add up all the snaps, but quite a few goal line carries for him. So a little concerned there with Taylor and Barkley on the touchdowns front, and a little concerned for both of them on the receptions front. Henry doesn't need receptions. I mean, I think he's got legit 20 touchdown upside in this offense. Yards before contact of the Baltimore Ravens running backs last year, 3.2. It was 2.2 for the Titans. I mean, just imagine Henry with an extra yard of, getting up to an extra yard of speed after he gets the ball. And, they do throw it to him. I don't know if the Ravens will, but, I'm a big advocate for giving him a screen pass once every quarter and see what happens. He usually
how could you
make
not?
something happen.
That's why he should. Yes, he should have a 4 target per game floor just based on the 1 target per quarter in the screen game. It should be a requirement, like a quota.
The head coach should,
they have to
tell the OC, you have to do this.
Have you seen him in the screen game?
Yeah, he gets the load going, man. He's hard to tackle.
He's crazy.
Not really worried about his efficiency numbers were good. Tackle breaking numbers were still good last year. I'm not worried about him really falling off. I guess the one concern is that, you get over 30, the injuries might pile up, but I think that's true of any running back in general. I think Henry, to answer your question, is the value of these three, and a really good second round value if you want to go running back in the second. I've been sort of shying away from Taylor and Barkley in the first, but they're fine in the second round as well.
I mean, look at this ADP. Up 4 spots in high stakes. Look at that.
Taylor.
Jonathan Taylor. Start with Jonathan Taylor because he's going actually in the first round at the FFPC in the Players Championship. He is actually going first round. Saquon is going around pick 13, 14, and then Henry at the end of the second round. That's where they're going at the FFPC, and that's where a lot of people are going to be drafting. High stakes, a lot of high stakes drafts happening this weekend. That's a little more similar than best ball when you're trying to gauge, okay, what's the ADP going to be like in my home league? The problem is in home leagues, the Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor brand name gets them drafted in the second round as a baseline, and often you'll have a fantasy drafter who's staring down a Garrett Wilson, and they just go, I don't trust him. He's never done anything more than 12.5 fantasy points per game. I've never seen it. I got to go with what I know. I got to go with Barkley. I got to go with Taylor. So that's what ends up happening in real life. Right? That's what. But for me, sometimes what Joe Barstool does in the home league is informative. Sometimes we can check ourselves as overthinking analysts and be like, that does have a point. Like Derrick Henry has always wanted to be in this exact situation, right? Saquon Barkley's always wanted to be in this situation. Jonathan Taylor's always wanted to be in this situation. We probably should be drafting them. Like we probably, get over ourselves. We're gonna thread the needle and talk ourselves into Chris Olave at that pick. Really? We're just going to ignore the risk that Puka Nacua is actually the number 2 receiver on his own team, and we're not going to draft. What are we doing?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree that you get into that second round, and those receivers there are not nearly as appealing as the first round, which happens often. But this is a pretty severe drop off from that first tier. And then you look at what the receivers are that are available in the third and the fourth, and that they're not all that different than the second round. I think that the 9 or 10 through 25 range for receivers is not all that different. So maybe it's better to load up on the high touch running back there.
Ooh! It looks like we're ready to start the show. That was a little primer, a little pre-show, and then you see John has these earpieces in. John can hear what's happening. He can hear the Alan Parsons project. Alan Parsons, who was I heard interviewed recently on the Rick Beato YouTube channel. He had no idea this would be a sports game. No idea. Welcome to the Mind of Mansion program. One of my good friends in this business, we go back a long way. He is a true fantasy ranking OG that people need. This particular analyst in their lives for the month of August, so we deliver on the Mind of Mansion program. Here with me today it is John Paulsen. Talk to me.
Yeah, I thought we had already started the show, but here we are. I'm excited to start it again.
Brilliant.
What an intro.
Just brilliant.
80s Bulls.
Well, yeah, 1990 Chicago
90s,
Bulls.
90s Bulls, yeah.
From North Carolina. Right?
Yeah.
From 4 for 4. And the beauty is you played college basketball in the Midwest. So you've had some exposure. You probably went to the United Center and saw some Bulls games.
I did not. I was more of a Bucks fan.
Okay. So you saw? Did you see Michael play the Bucks?
I don't think I saw Michael live. There was one opportunity to see him with the Wizards, and I don't think I made it happen. That's
too bad.
Yeah, it is. He's the GOAT.
He is. I got to see him twice, and it was cool. It was cool. I was behind the basket. I was kind of up and behind the basket. It was fine. It was good. It was great. I think he had, it was a very standard, like 26, 6 assists, 7 rebounds, a very standard Michael Jordan game. They won. I think they beat the Hornets. Right. It was just a regular season. It's nothing. I didn't get to see anything epic. My buddy is in the poster where he's flying from the free throw line. Right. And so he was at the slam dunk competition, and you can see him in the crowd on the poster.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And so he had the poster in it, and then he would just be like, oh, that's me also with the hat. That kid, that's me. And that's pretty cool. I mean, I think you think maybe, okay, there's a little bit of ego here, right? With you getting that poster over your bed. That's a little, what's happening here? But at the same time, I never thought that. Like some people, based on their demeanor, they can get away with a little more, hey, look at me. Hey, look at my own memorabilia. Hey, I have a museum of myself. Like there's actors and athletes, and then sometimes like it's just like they're showing you some stuff, and they have just a way about them where you're not thinking, oh, this person is making it about them. It's just a cool thing that's kind of a fun little Easter egg, and then you're on to talking about something else. And so he pulled it off. He pulled off having the poster of himself over his bed. Was
he like a generally humble guy in the rest of his life? That helps.
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yes and no. There was definitely a confidence, and there was definitely a bougie quality to him. You know these people where they don't give off, hey, look at me, but they also make a lot of choices in their life where it's clear they don't want to be around when, there's manual labor or there's going to be anything uncomfortable. They want to live a life surrounded by luxury, but they're not going to give off, hey, I'm, condescending. I just like the nice things in life, and I'm gonna go out of my way to make sure that that's how I set my life up. And when I decline certain invitations, no one is holding it against them because you're like, oh, that's my bougie friend. He's not gonna do that. He's not gonna go camping with us. That's never gonna happen. Pulled it off.
Yeah,
the bottom line is he pulled it off.
Okay, so just a couple things to wrap up this. I think you can be humble and not want to do manual labor. Like I think those things are mutually exclusive.
Well, but for example, like let's say you're moving apartments. Yeah. There's no fucking way he would volunteer to help.
Right. That doesn't make him like not humble though. It just makes him not helpful.
Right. He's not helpful. But like what I'm saying, like if you actually charted it with like a spreadsheet, you would think this guy was cocky and arrogant, but he's not. He wasn't. He was a perfectly easygoing guy that everyone liked to hang out with. But then it was like a magic trick where you're looking around going, where is he? He's not doing. Oh, like he pulled it off. You know what I'm talking about.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it looks like, according to, well, I'm asking you. Let's ask John Paulsen. Brandon Aiyuk, what did you think of this whole saga? Just what was your take on this whole saga now that he's probably going to be a 49er?
Are we back to that? Because last I saw was it Rappaport saying that it's very up in the air. It seems to me like he's at practice and they're close. I mean, they offered him $30 million or something, right? So
I guess, okay, so I already biased the question. That's
Yeah.
my failing as an interviewer. I
Yes.
injected my opinion into the question.
Into the question, yeah.
And kids at home, future podcasters, aspiring podcast, don't do that. Don't do that. Aspiring journalists, don't do it. Don't do it. Okay, John, how are you reading the Brandon Aiyuk contract situation?
Well, I mean, it seems like he's going to be back with the 49ers. I think that,
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's like 90-10 or 85-15 to me. Like, things could maybe still fall apart. I'm ranking him and projecting him as if he's going to be with the 49ers, and I'm a big fan of his game, and he was extremely productive last year and excellent route runner and good quarterback and all that good stuff. Great offense.
Yes.
It's gonna be a disaster if he goes for his fantasy value. If he goes to Pittsburgh, it's gonna be a complete nightmare for him and Pickens,
Awful.
especially it's just terrible.
Awful.
On a weekly basis. Commanders, if he landed there, I heard some rumors there. It's obviously bad for Terry McLaurin, but I think a little more optimism if he were to land with the Commanders. Maybe his value stays about the same or drops a little. I'm pretty high on Jaden Daniels, so there's that. But obviously the best thing right now, given these three options, is for him to stay in San Francisco. I think he knows that too. So how much money is he really going to turn down here to try to maximize his next contract? I don't know.
I drafted Brandon Aiyuk recently in the deep end. Everyone should be subscribing to the deep end. Search in your podcast app for the deep end podcast. These guys do a great job. It's also on the Player Profiler podcast channel as well. It's on the YouTube channel. But I mean, Mike Shope, Adam Krautwurst, they're high stakes players, and they talk about fantasy football from the chair of a high stakes player and what their thought process is. And they host this big invitational tournament. And I was in with Rich Rebar, drafted against a bunch of killers, and I had a great time. And it's superflex. And I started two quarterbacks early. I think in the first round, Jalen Hurts. Third round, Caleb Williams. And then proceeded to watch 15 non-quarterbacks go off the board, which is always a hellscape when you're drafting in a superflex or 2QB league and you take the last quarterback and you're like, oh yeah, I could have waited around and got just the very next quarterback on my list. Like that is so deflating. But then I was happy because it came around to me again in our next round or two, and I had the choice of DJ Moore or Brandon Aiyuk. And I had DJ Moore highlighted because it was a stack with Caleb Williams. Now this is just, I think, it's just a handful of leagues, so it's not a big field tournament. So stacking is really not that important. And at the very last moment, I flipped it, and I took Aiyuk. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm taking Aiyuk over DJ Moore every time. I've got Aiyuk at 13, half PPR, DJ Moore at 23. DJ Moore is great, but we're in Chicago now with two other really good receivers, target earners. This isn't Darnell Mooney anymore, or whoever was competing with. Like, there was a bunch of goofballs on the depth chart after him last year. You have Keenan Allen, and then he's going like as a wide receiver 3.
Yeah.
You got number 2 draft prospect.
Who was it on the Bears? Was it Equanimous St. Brown? Who was
last year?
I don't remember.
It wasn't Mooney. Was it Mooney the year before?
No. Mooney was the number 2, but who was the number 3, number 4? I mean, some of these seasons they blend together for me.
Well, yeah, we're getting up there in age, my friend. We've been around the block. Let's see here. Targets. DJ Moore, 136. Cole Kmet, 90. Darnell Mooney, 61. Roshan Johnson, 40. Tyler Scott, 32.
Oh, it was
the third most targeted receiver.
Wow.
Now that's upgraded to Odunze. Mooney's upgraded to Keenan Allen.
That's like, so he went from Mooney to Allen, and from Tyler Scott to Rome Odunze.
Yeah. So, and then there's the whole thing too of DJ Moore having to forge a connection with Caleb Williams. I think he's a fine wide receiver too. Like, I could see it, but I'm going with Aiyuk and the stability there. Assuming he's in San Francisco, I'm rolling the dice because the 49ers offense is just a lot better. The quarterback play, we can count on it, and we know what his role is.
This is not a betrayal of Rich. I'm just going to say it. He did DM me the next day and said, A, that was a really fun draft, and B, I love your team. So listen, when another analyst, someone else in the industry, reaches out to you cold and just says, loved your team last night, John knows that, man, that really filled me up. And I think it might have been the Aiyuk pick. That might have been the thing that sent it over. Now, Pickens is by himself in Pittsburgh. Yeah. And, you are, correct me if I'm wrong, a target share connoisseur. You really value a projected target share on August 27th. And not only can you project target share, you can also project air yard share onto Pickens. You can give him the target share and the air yard share. Now we're cooking with gas, man, right?
Well, yeah, if you look at what's happening in Pittsburgh, but the only caveat is, yeah, he should get all the targets, but look who his OC is. I mean, he's a donkey. He screwed up Drake London. He screwed up Kyle Pitts. So we have to go with the assumption of rational coaching here, and that Mike Tomlin is going to keep control of this offensive coordinator and give him some guidance in terms of who we're featuring in the passing game. What about the
idea that he was just doing the best he could with what he had at quarterback?
If you have a bad quarterback, you could still tell them and design plays to target your best players consistently.
Yeah.
If you know what you're doing on offense, which he was pretty good in Tennessee, Arthur Smith, but then he gets control of the whole thing, and it's a disaster. I mean, the talent that was there last year, and then their production. So that's my concern about George Pickens. I don't have a huge concern about that. I think that Mike Tomlin will be like, okay, we need to get 8 to 10 targets a game for him. That's the one thing we need to do, that and establish the run. And Pickens has been putting on a show in camp. So I like him as a wide receiver, 25, 26 in that range. Touchdown upside. Quarterback situation isn't bad. Like, it's not great if you're a Steeler fan, probably, because you don't know who your quarterback is really. But I mean, Russell Wilson was pretty efficient last year. If you look at his numbers, even if his reputation of his play last year was pretty bad, like everybody kind of was down on him, his numbers were actually pretty good, pretty efficient. And Justin Fields can toss it around too. I mean, he's not the second coming of anything, but he's a good backup. And if Arthur Smith is doing the right thing, which he did pepper AJ Brown with targets in Tennessee. So, if he can get back to that, then Pickens will be fine.
This is the slippery slope. This is the slippery slope of coach-centric analysis. This is what you're feeling. You're feeling it. You're never feeling sure-footed when you pick the coach as the single thing that is going to maybe get you off a player or get you on a player. And speaking of, Desmond Ridder released today. Gone. So, further my point, I like Pickens, but I also like Terry McLaurin. I like a lot of these fourth round wide receivers. Sometimes they're leaking into the third round. Sometimes you can get them in the fourth round, fifth round. Like, there's so many great receivers in these rounds, including DJ Moore. I still love DJ Moore. DJ Moore is the most durable wide receiver in the league. He is one of the most consistent wide receivers in the league. He finally has what you consider a top 12 quarterback as a thrower, potentially, right? He has, for the first time, the potential of a top 12 quarterback with passing yards or whatever passing efficiency numbers you want to use. He's never had that. The Bears have never had a 4,000-yard passer in the history of the franchise, and Caleb Williams will certainly fix that. A lot of receivers would touch off. Brandon Aiyuk is in there. So it makes more sense than ever you look at how ADPs are slotting in to go running back in the second round. To go with a Taylor, with a Henry, with a Saquon. It's what you talked about pre-show. We talked about this. Let's get these guys. Let's forget all the running back concerns. These guys were top 5 picks in previous years. Some for the right reasons, some for the wrong reasons, but now you're drafting him for all the right reasons. And the trade-off between Olave and Pickens just isn't there. The trade-off between Aiyuk and Olave just isn't there. Or even, dare I say Garrett Wilson. Dare I say Garrett Wilson? Because what's the big difference between Garrett Wilson and, say, Terry McLaurin? What is it, John?
Well, I would put Wilson and Marvin Harrison in that group of late first round receivers. And I don't know what ADP you're talking, but for me, it's the top 3 running backs. If you can get one of those, if you miss out on them, I'm taking best available receiver in PPR formats, especially in that first round. Then I'm coming back with a running back in the second, probably Derrick Henry, based on my rankings. And then, as you mentioned, one of my favorite strategies is to nab real world wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 types in the middle to late rounds, because you're just getting such a discount. You're still getting 120 targets. Maybe the quarterback plays a little better, or maybe their efficiency is a little better than what people are giving them credit for. And yeah, you're getting some really good players available late, mid to late. I mean, Metcalf going in the 4th round, Deontay Johnson going in the 7th round, 8th round.
Oh,
not in
the leagues I'm in, but yes, I know that in home leagues, in just traditional fantasy leagues, 12-team leagues, you can get Deontay Johnson, 6th round in a 12-teamer. It's wild.
So
this is a true wide receiver 1 who's going to get at least 120 targets. He's the perfect skill match with Bryce Young. And I love Chris Godwin this year. I love Chris Godwin in the slot. I've always loved Chris Godwin. And they have similar games. But when you look at the target share math, I had to go Deontay Johnson at the Kings Classic in Canton. Theo and I were down to Deontay versus Godwin, and we had to go Deontay just because the John Paulsen target share math was indisputable. And talking to Billy, Billy is as bullish on Derrick Henry as you are. Like, it was disorienting for me to see where we have Derrick Henry versus ADP. And at some point, you're like, hey, fuck ADP, right? Fuck it, right? ADP can kiss my ass. ADP can go to hell. Who cares? This is Derrick Henry. And you have some of the best in the business, Billy Muzio, John Paulsen, as well as your friend from down the street who just watches the Red Zone channel, all in agreement that, hey, Derrick Henry is a great guy to draft in fantasy football this year. So guess what? I'm beaten. I'm beaten, right? I very rarely can fall for the banana in the tailpipe running back in the second round, because typically most years that guy's a Devon A-Chain type player. And I'm not falling for it, right? And so I've had this muscle memory. But, Derrick Henry on the Ravens is new. And so you have to adjust, and you have to just throw out your previous assumptions of what you should be doing in every round and, back into it and be like, wait a second, I can get Derrick Henry, and then I can go rat-a-tat-tat, 3 wide receiver ones in a row, all the way out to who? Who the way? So we know Terry McLaurin is he's rising like a helium balloon for all the right reasons. Pickens has had a great camp. People are buzzed about Pickens. We know that. Aiyuk is getting settled in, 90% chance, as you mentioned. He's going to be a 49er, and it's going to be 15-plus fantasy points a game for Brandon Aiyuk. You can pencil that in. He was going in the early second round on Underdog a couple months ago before all of this contract uncertainty came up, and now we're right back to 90% chance he's going to be with the 49ers. If you extend it out, this tier of receivers we're talking about, Deontay Johnson, and then would you consider Tank Dell to be the end of that tier? Because to me, he has more upside than either of the other Texans receivers. Those guys are typically long gone. Dell lingers for all the wrong reasons. The bias against his size and the fact that he's a second-year player, but so is Puka Nacua. Like, you think, oh, Tank Dell was a one-year wonder, but Puka's for real. Wait, what?
Yeah, initially, and I don't know where I'm at right now, this whole thing with the preseason snaps and Tank Dell not being on the field in 2 receiver sets has me a little, but it just, when CJ Stroud was asked to design a play with any receiving core in the league, he had Tank Dell as his slot guy. Like, he picked Tank Dell over every other player in the slot. So he loves him. I think he'll get there. It might not be pretty week to week. Have Diggs and Dell very close right now. But you're talking like 5th round. Like, Rashee Rice is probably not going to get suspended. And if we knew right now that Rashee Rice wasn't going to get suspended, or if we knew all summer he wasn't going to be suspended, he'd be going in the 3rd round.
That's right.
In all likelihood.
That's
so
right.
With Hollywood Brown dealing with whatever shoulder injury he's got, I think Rice is pretty safe not to get suspended this year. And as a 5th round pick right now, he really should be going in the 4th. I've got him ranked at 22. So to me, he's like in that 5th round boom. Dell's solid there as well if Rice is off the board. But yeah, this is what we're talking about with these 2nd, 3rd tier wide receiver ones that you can get this at this point, and you're still going to get 120, 130 targets, which might match what, a Devontae Adams or one of these 2nd round Drake London. Like, Drake London's really overcooked for me. I like him, but he's going wide receiver 10, something like that. Yeah. That's expensive.
This is what I'm talking about. London, Olave, Garrett Wilson, you're paying top of the market prices. You're paying, all of it is baked in. All the projections are baked in. These guys have never delivered a wide receiver 1 season, and yet the projections are that they will this year. And so you have to pay top of the market. You have to pay for the full projection on a guy that's never actually delivered on those receivers, where you have other receivers that have delivered in the past, and they're going a few rounds later. And what's the difference between the projection of a Drake London and the projection of a Rashee Rice? Rashee Rice, in the last month, he's up close to 20 spots on Underdog. He was going at pick 60. He's now going pick 40. Look at this chart. This is what I'm talking about. This is why you have to adjust. You have to and not think, oh, I'm going to get Rashee Rice in the 5th round. Maybe not. Now, again, in a neighborhood home league, yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Not
in a neighborhood league, you're going to get Rashee Rice in the 5th round. Don't sweat it at all. But when you're in a competitive league, like I've been drafting in these competitive drafts, and I'm like, okay, I'm never going to get Rashee Rice because everyone's on him. Everyone's figured out. Like, the NFL's not going to suspend him. The precedent has been set with all these players suspended in the last year or two. The courts have to rule, and the player has to be handed a sentence. And then, okay, the NFL has all the information that they could possibly have. Then they can send down a judgment. Okay, you're suspended 3 games. Like, this rush to public relations, the problem that the NFL was so quick to act for like 10 years. Remember, they would just snap off these suspensions. And then they had a couple incidents where, as it turns out, oh no, actually the girlfriend recants, or the friends all disappear, and the charges are dropped, or whatever it is. And then they're like, well, why did we suspend this superstar player 8 games? And law enforcement has just shuffled away. Now we're damaging our franchises that we represent unfairly. So, and don't even get me started with Deflategate and all that. But so you've seen the NFL has started taking a step back, and because we are now like a decade removed from the initial outrage over the concussion scandals and the off-field violence that you had with all these players from Ray Rice on down, right? So there's been a real leveling off of the zeal with which the NFL commissioner's office issues these suspensions. And so now we adjust. We're like, no, there's no way Rashee Rice, he's not going to be suspended until next May.
I agree with all that. Can I respond to something I saw in the chat? I saw Deontay Johnson slander from Uncle Ted, who says he doesn't get red zone targets. He had 15 touchdowns in 2020 and 2021 combined in 31 games played. Yeah, this 20-20 thing he's saying about Deontay, get out of here. He had 5 touchdowns last year with terrible quarterback play in 13 games. Like the last 2 years, he had 147 targets and 0 touchdowns in 2022. And I think that's what Uncle Ted's thinking about.
Yeah, he's chasing outliers, Uncle Ted.
Yeah, he's worried about the outlier.
I can't, but this is embarrassing. This is embarrassing. We talk about not chasing outliers so often on this show. And then Uncle Ted, you see him in the chat every week, and he's not learning. And it makes me look bad. This is a regular listener. This is a guy that's in here a lot. He's making me look like a fool. Like, John, I've been teaching these people not to pay attention, especially to touchdown totals. If anything, it's a snap by. You snap off a draft pick whenever you see a guy go for 0 touchdowns and he's fallen a round or 2 based on the previous year. If he did no change in efficiency, no change in situation, just the touchdown rate collapses, you snap off that draft pick at value the next year. It's the easiest thing to do. Fade the guy with the unsustainable touchdown rate, Jahan Dotson, and you draft Deontay Johnson. Imagine if you had traded Jahan Dotson for Deontay Johnson in Dynasty, how great you would be feeling right now. We're a great tag team here, aren't we? We really let Uncle Ted have it.
Well, now he's trying to move the goalposts, and he's saying, I'll take Brian Thomas over Deontay Johnson, which is okay. Brian Thomas is a great target, but I'd still take Deontay Johnson.
Uncle Ted's been burned. Uncle Ted has been shredded and burned, and he's trying to work his way out of it. You can't get out of it, man. Well, here's an idea, Uncle Ted. Apologize. Say I was wrong, and you're right, John, and we move on. That's the best thing you can do in the chat. That's my recommendation for Uncle Ted.
Uncle Ted wants to know how many of those targets or how many touchdowns that Deontay Johnson got were actually in the red zone. I don't have that information. I don't really care. It's scoring touchdowns is the important thing. But
just continuing to ask banal questions does not conceal your wrongness.
He's really fixated on the 20-20 thing.
Okay. Great talking point, Uncle Ted.
Yeah.
I found an interesting stat line. I mean, it's not that I didn't find it. It was in everybody's face. Listen to me. I found this. I was combing the box scores, John. It was the advanced stats play-by-play that I was combing through. And I found Trey Lance 5 interceptions in a single preseason game, which is funny. It's a funny thing. It's a funny stat. Can we just talk about the lesson of Trey Lance in fantasy football?
I'm sure you have an angle on this, and I'm interested to hear it. But the only thing that I wrote down after when I saw that question was, "Mama, don't let your babies grow up to be cowboys."
That it's a mental game, and just drafting a player coming off a small sample college career based solely on physical skills is a mistake. It is a mistake. You can go back in hindsight and say that the Bills did a great job drafting Josh Allen in the top 10. I will forever tell you that's not true, that they got lucky. You are allowed to hit a gut shot on the river and win all the money. And it still didn't make any sense. All right? The play was still wrong based on pot odds, and you got lucky. That can always happen. And it happened as it should happen, as it typically happens to the 49ers with Trey Lance. And once in a while, you're going to get lucky. And that's it. But this infatuation with the physical skills of prospects, particularly those from small schools, small sample. Lance had both the small sample and the small school. And the beauty is he lost his job permanently to Mr. Irrelevant, who is famous for not having been blessed with significant physical skills, but just doing the right thing, the right throw, in the right situation. It's beautiful. Like, isn't that sports poetry? The career of Brock Purdy juxtaposed with the career of Trey Lance.
Yeah, same team too. Interesting.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You can't make it up. It's like a movie. Someone make a movie about that. So we talked about, talking about injuries pre-show, injuries you might be concerned about. Curtis Samuel, he's not going to produce in the first couple weeks, spoiler alert. And that really opens things up. So we have things really opened up in Washington for Terry McLaurin. You're very bullish. We've been just kept listing Terry McLaurin as an option in the 4th and 5th round, depending on how competitive your league is. But you're in agreement, right? We're pounding Scary Terry this year, right? We're all in on Terry.
Yeah.
This is the year. This is the year we've been waiting for. Just like this is what Saquon's been waiting for. This is what Derrick Henry's been waiting for. This is what Scary Terry's been waiting for. So just draft him. When a player finds his way into the situation he's been wanting for 5 years, draft him.
Yeah, wide receiver 31.
Oh.
Going behind T. Higgins and Zay Flowers and others. No, I'm really bullish on Jaden Daniels. So I think given the target competition there, it's really good for Terry.
Beyond. Because he's phenomenal. He is one of these few receivers that we've seen win close to the line of scrimmage, win on intermediate routes as someone that can get you first downs, but then also on deep targets. He runs a sub 4.40. He can do it. Like, there's a handful of these guys I know because we've seen whole seasons. Jalen Waddle's another one where we've seen them do it in different ways with hyper versatility for a full season. You know Jalen Waddle would be phenomenal in a wide receiver one chair for any given team going up against opposing alpha cornerbacks. Wouldn't be a problem for Jalen Waddle. Wouldn't be a problem. Not going to be a problem. Has never been a problem for Terry McLaurin. But now in Buffalo, that guy seems to be a tight end. Like, that guy seems to be Dalton Kincaid, like the dream scenario laid out in front of you. Is there anything not to like here? Because I think that we could see a real changing of the guard this year at the tight end position. It just makes sense. You've got Rob Gronkowski's retired. Travis Kelce is in the twilight years of his career. He's starting to finally experience the inefficiency and the injuries and off-field distractions and all these things that stack up. It just makes sense that he would no longer be the top scoring tight end, potentially not even top three. And then the big three tight ends opens up. And it could be, you could have a total changing of the guard among the top three tight ends in the league this year. And two of the guys that I'm thinking about first and foremost are Dalton Kincaid and Kyle Pitts. And so that's the big question, is when I'm in the fifth round and I'm seeing these two guys, what do I do?
Yeah, I think given when you ask the question better value, I'm looking at their ADP, and I think, Pitts is the slightly better value because he's going like a round later, or 9 picks later, depending on what ADP you're looking at.
Kincaid's around pick 50, and Pitts is in the late
turn.
50s.
Yeah, so near this 5-6 turn.
Right.
So Kincaid, as you mentioned, it's opened up for him. The only concern that I'm going to mention is that when Dawson Knox was active, Kincaid's numbers took a big dive. Now, that doesn't mean that's going to continue, because there's 160 targets from Diggs up for grabs. There's 81 from Gabe Davis up for grabs. So they have to go somewhere.
240 targets.
The assumption of rational coaching you'd have Kincaid as one of your best receivers on the field like 80% of the time or more, right? So for that to happen, they have to run a lot of 12, I think, because they do love Dawson Knox blocking. So I'm just a little concerned that he's going to be a 65-70% player. But if I do draft him, it's just on the hope that that's not the case and he's more of an 80-85% player. Now, I still am drafting Curtis Samuel. I was on him all offseason. I'm not worried about the toe. I'm buying the dip because it does sound like he might be back week 1. If he's not going to, I'm not going to start him.
No.
But you're not drafting him for week 1. You're drafting him for bye weeks, maybe emerging week 4, week 5. Into the the wide receiver 1-ish role for the Bills. He's a very good route runner. He can play all over the field. They hand him the ball. They have in the past. He's reunited with that offensive coordinator from Carolina, where he was a wide receiver 25 fantasy wise as the third option in the passing game with Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback. Like, there's a lot of upside here for Curtis Samuel, even if it doesn't seem like it. So he's going a round or 2 or 3 later now because everybody's worried about the toe. I'm happy to take that and take him as my wide receiver 5 and just have him on my bench until I need him later on in the season.
What about the possibility also that the Bills just bust this year? Their offensive line, their defense, they had a window, and it's very possible that they've let it slip through their fingers, and the window closes on them, and they don't even make the playoffs this year. That the offense just isn't as good. Like, if you don't have any weapons and your best receiver is a tight end, I mean, theoretically, as long as the defense also degrades, then there's just going to be more pass attempts. You're going to have more comeback mode, and Allen will get their own volume, and the offense will get their own volume, but the team doesn't make the playoffs. So I think that's the hope for fantasy, is that this team could actually be worse than anyone realizes because we've just been so accustomed to the Bills being one of the top 4 teams in the AFC that it doesn't work out that way, that they are actually the 3rd best team in the AFC East. It's very possible with the Jets, with Aaron Rodgers, and with the Dolphins. So the theory is that it doesn't matter because they'll just have to throw more anyway. And that means Kincaid's going to get there either way. Josh Allen could actually even be a value because he actually has to throw more than he's ever thrown. And as he gets older, he's going to throw a little bit more and run a little bit less. Stays healthier. Like there's arguments here, but I can't get there on Keon Coleman. I'm assuming that because you're bullish on both Kincaid and Curtis Samuel, you're off Keon Coleman. If there was one thing I would have bet on in this show if I had $1 million, it was that you wouldn't be bullish on Keon Coleman. There's one thing I know in my bones. It's that John Paulsen doesn't love Keon Coleman. But what about Shakir, though?
Shakir's interesting. He had a pretty good yards per route run last year, 1.84 or something like that. So that's flashing. I think you're talking back to Coleman. Like I did just draft him in the point per first down league, and then I drafted Curtis Samuel 2 rounds later. So I grabbed both, and the reason I grabbed Coleman is this: it looks like he's going to be playing every down with Josh Allen. Like it might not be pretty, but he might get there. I'm not bullish on him.
I have to see it to believe it, John.
Yeah. He was not.
I'm going to go down. I'm going to go down just saying, hey, everybody, I got to see it. I'm going to go down. There's certain players I'm happy to go down on, right? Xavier Legette.
Phrasing.
Oh, shit. I mean, did that really happen?
You just said that, yeah.
Wow. A lot of rookie podcast host mistakes here. As Tyler, our fearless producer, Tyler Knably, just continues to hit me with the boing, boing, boing sound effect. Thank you, Tyler. No, Tyler, don't stop. Why? Why would you stop? It's beautiful. Thank you. It's a beautiful thing. Again, all the kids learning what not to do from the Podfather today on the Mind of Mansion program. Keon Coleman, Xavier Legette, Ricky Pearsall. I am happy to let those particular players take me down this year. By all means. Happy to do it. Happy to do it. Do you remember who it was last year? Remember who this guy was last year? Quentin Johnston.
Oh, yeah, I remember you were bet down on him, yeah.
We had this conversation about Quentin Johnston, and we were like, hey man, he's gonna run all the routes with Justin Herbert, 3 receiver sets. And I was like, maybe week 1. They want it to happen. I know they want it to happen, and I know the Bills want it to happen. I did see the Hard Knocks episode where the Bears played the Bills, and Keon Coleman was absolutely erased from the game, which I found funny. So we'll see what happens. We're going to see what happens together. You and I are going to see what happens together.
Okay, let me just interject. I don't remember being high on Quentin Johnston or saying anything.
No,
like,
you
positive
didn't.
about
No,
him
you
much.
didn't.
I
No,
might have.
you were
I might
just
have,
like,
but I
hey,
don't
be
remember.
careful. You were just like, hey, be careful fading him so hard, saying he shouldn't even be drafted.
Yeah.
Wait a second. You can't say that. The guy's going to be getting,
Routes.
That's what you said. But we agreed. We were both very bearish on Quentin Johnston last year, which is what prompted me to believe that you also aren't getting anywhere near Keon Coleman.
Yeah. The other question I follow up on Ricky Pearsall, because he did very well over at reception perception in terms of his route running.
Right.
So I'm wondering what I don't see right now. He's injured. Number one, I don't see a path.
That's it.
I don't see a path to routes.
He missed all of training camp in his rookie year. Get out of here. And he was drafted on the strength of a one spectacular catch in college. And I know, yes, he was a good route runner. I understood. But there's also a rule I have where if it's one big spectacular catch that everyone is talking about and it's on a loop, this one highlight, then I really want to see more. And I didn't get the production in college that you would expect from a guy being drafted at the 1-2 turn in the NFL draft. And whenever I see that, I'm like, I think I'm willing to just fade him because I want to see more. And if he wants to prove me wrong in the NFL, by all means, please, Ricky, prove me wrong, baby. But I don't have to draft you, man. But by all means, prove me wrong.
I love these conversations that you have in your head with these players who don't know who you are or care.
No idea.
If you draft them or don't draft them.
Don't care about fantasy football. Don't care about Matt Kelly. Don't care at all about anything. Could not possibly care less about their metrics on Player Profiler. They just want to go, beat the guy in front of them every snap. And that's what they're thinking about. And God bless them. Chuba Hubbard and Jerome Ford have been super ultra values all year. They have been my favorite RB2s in these super aggressive hero RB builds where I'm starting with either, Bijan or Saquon, Derrick Henry, even a Kenneth Walker, Rashad White. It's a good sampling of, in the various rounds, the guys that I'm drafting at the running back position. Happy to wait and be the last person to draft an RB2, knowing there's Jerome Ford and there is Chuba Hubbard, the ultimate bridge running backs to whoever your true RB2 is going to be in week 4. And only now are the running backs ahead of them hitting the pup, and then their ADPs are popping 2 or 3 rounds. And it's like, hey, guys, like in this Kings Classic in Canton, in this auction where we had like $10 left, I was so stressed that we weren't going to be able to close Jerome Ford. I was terrified. When we missed out on Chuba and we get outbid on Chuba, I was grabbing Theo's bicep, which is like this big. It's like a tree. I was grabbing his bicep going, oh my God, if we don't get Jerome Ford, we're dead. We're dead. I mean, we wouldn't have been dead, but it would have been bad. Saved us. He saved these guys are going to save you.
Yeah, I'm in a really annoying long-time keeper league, and I've got James Conner as my RB1, and I'm 2 picks away. I was really hoping to answer questions about Chuba Hubbard after I was able to draft him here in the 12th round.
Nice.
Because these guys in this league follow, a lot of them follow me, and I think they literally just draft the players I like to annoy me. It's happened already multiple times in this draft.
Guy took his second. Talking to Justin Boone from The Score, someone you've been competing against in Fantasy Pros, top 5 ranker. You're a top 5 ranker. He's a top 5 ranker. You guys have been going head to head for many years. He's in a league with friends that do the exact same thing.
It's irritating. Somebody took Jaden Daniels as their second quarterback. I hate it. In the 9th round.
And you didn't get it.
I didn't get Daniels, but I ended up with Purdy, and it's a 6 point per pass touchdown.
Ooh.
So I'm fine. I got
Ooh,
Purdy
that's
and
great.
Goff, so I'm gonna do the Jared Goff gambit where I just start him at home, and
Good.
then I start Purdy on the road. Anyway, yeah, I'm holding out here for Hubbard as my number 2. This could be a 4-week thing that turns into a 8-10 week thing for Hubbard being the RB1 there, because how quickly are they going to ramp up Jonathan Brooks if Hubbard is playing well, which we saw him play well late last year, fantasy RB9 from week 12 to week 18. So I'm wondering, with the week 11 bye, does Brooks really take over in week 12 after, kind of coming back and being the backup from week 5 to 10, and then they have that bye week, or week 11 to sort of ramp him up. So perfect bridge running back along with Ford. If you're doing a hero or a 0 RB build where you just need some guys that are going to produce in the first half of the season, and then you'll figure it out mid-season, or who's going to be your RB2 or RB1 late in the season, you'll figure it out. These are the guys, and they might end up being, if Brooks or Chubb have a setback, they could end up being league winners.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to say thank you. Thank you. And then in the final rounds, who you got, Roschon Johnson or Jordan Mason?
Well, I'm kind of a Khalil Herbert guy at heart, so I have a tough time with the third running back. I think Mason probably has a cleaner path right now. I think Mitchell is, from the last reports, is going to be on the team, but he's got this hamstring injury. This guy's hamstrings are as bad as Christian Watson's. Now, Mason did great last year. His rushing grades were great. Had a really high yards per carry, if I remember correctly, over 5. The only concern here is that Shanahan is like, whenever he's asked about Jordan Mason, Shanahan loves to talk about how much capital that Elijah Mitchell has built up in his years for the 49ers.
Okay. All right.
So that's the one concern. I would go with Mason, though, of those 2.
Well,
so I think that just because Mitchell's not healthy, and I don't really like taking RB3s, especially for the Bears,
But earlier you talked about the target leaders for the Bears last year, and Roschon Johnson's surprisingly high on that list.
Well, it was just a weird list. But now you got DeAndre Swift.
Yeah.
Who might get some targets.
He will.
So,
he will. But it's my elaborate DeAndre Swift fade is to just pound Roschon Johnson late.
Okay. That's elaborate.
All right.
I mean,
Drake May. Drake May is winning this QB competition in New England.
Yeah.
So what's the best way to extract value from the Patriots passing game?
That is the question. Because Jalen Polk is the guy I'm most interested in, but apparently, like Demario Douglas, KJ Osborne are playing ahead of him. Polk, it's hard to get like a read on this receiver room because Baker was doing really well early. Polk's always been doing well. I think Polk probably is the most talented of this group. But again, I'm not a huge college football guy. I'm not a huge scouting guy. I'm just paying attention to reception perception, beat reports, and trying to figure it out. So Polk late, because his ADP's in the tank. Take him as a wide receiver 6. That's one way I would go. Hunter Henry, I think, is a solid tight end 2 if you need it. If you need 2 tight ends, a lot of leagues you don't.
Right.
But I think he's going to be pretty solid. And then at running back, Stevenson is just kind of.
What about Demario Douglas?
Oh, he's fine. He's just a PPR guy, 5 for 50.
Okay.
Do you like him?
Yeah, I like it. I think he's going to be their number 1 receiver.
You think
I think he's been
60?
underrated his whole career. I think he went to Liberty, and I think he was great there. He was great last year, and no one cares.
You're a Patriots fan, right?
Yeah, I like Pop Douglas a lot. I mean, and again, I I used to be more bullish on these rookies. I used to get more excited. I used to be real into these sexy rookies, early second round, guys with athleticism. You know,
Sure.
it was but it's been beat out of me, man. It's just been beat the enthusiasm for these guys. I mean, Javon Baker, I just can't do it. I'm like, I get it, I would love it, and I can't do it. Now, we have some ambiguous backfields here. Titans, Broncos, Bengals, Cowboys, just devoid of any excitement. Is there a backfield that you think is the best to exploit that's cheap?
So my options are the Titans, Broncos, Bengals, Cowboys.
You can go off the board. You could say Chargers.
Oh, okay.
There's a whole bunch of options. I'm just
Chargers.
there's just a bunch of these backfields where the team has not invested much, right? I think the Titans certainly they went out and signed Tony Pollard, so they paid real money for Tony Pollard. They used a day 2 pick on Tajay Spears. The Broncos used a day 2 pick, an early day 2 pick on Javonte Williams. So they're not devoid of any capital at all. But I mean, the Chargers, a 6th rounder on Vidal, and then league minimum on Ravens running backs post Derrick Henry. I mean, woof. There's got to be some value to extract though from this.
Yeah, I'm looking at my rankings. Javonte Williams at 26, so I think he's like of these backfields probably like the clear leader. But I think that we haven't mentioned the Giants, and Devin Singletary is going really late. And he's just going to be a compiler, to use your phrase.
Yes.
He's
the ultimate running back compiler motor.
8th, 9th round, 3-down back capable. They're not going to be many touchdowns, but there should be 18 or so touches as long as they stay somewhat competitive. And he could hit that even in a game where they fall behind because he's a decent pass catcher as well. I'm pretty much staying away from I don't have much in the way of Pollard or Spears. I think they're going to be pass heavy. So I would lean, I guess, towards a pass catcher, but they both can catch passes. It's just going to be rotate each series type of a team. And I'm not optimistic about it. Try to have my running back sort of sealed up before this part of the draft hits, and then just start to draft guys like Hubbard or Ford or something later,
right?
As my RB 2 or 3s or whatever.
You're speaking my language with strategy here.
And then the Bengals. When Zach Moss signed there, I just assumed, okay, Moss is gonna take overall almost all the carries. Maybe Chase Brown's the 3rd down back. He's not particularly good in pass protection, although he's reportedly improved in that area. But Mixon was terrible in pass protection too, and still caught quite a few passes for the Bengals. But these reports where Chase Brown is getting like first reps with the first team, but his rushing grades were just brutal last year. I had him written down. 113th out of 129 last year. Running backs at PFF. In the preseason, though, 67th, or maybe that's Moss. 67th out of 172 in the preseason. Yeah, that's Chase Brown in the preseason. Of course, you're talking 5 carries. It's not a big sample. I don't know. Somebody's going to be valuable there, but unless they have to decide on a guy. And then just to touch on the Cowboys. I think Zeke is a compiler. As long as he's getting his 4 yards a carry. They might go to Dowdle, but they think Zeke's
You're the
starter.
one. There's someone in every league drafting Zeke, and you're the one. You're the one.
Dusty vets, man. Vets.
This is what I'm saying. This is why you threw me a curveball. Like, I just drafted Keon Coleman. Like, what? I went Coleman and then Zeke. Beautiful. So I've sort of come full circle here, trying to extract all this value from these teams, and instead of just circling back like you did with the Titans and being like, wait a second, can we just take a step back here and realize that this is just the reason why you need to draft Ladd McConkey. This is the reason why you need to draft Calvin Ridley. This is the reason why you need to draft CeeDee Lamb. This is even Cortland Sutton. Malik Neighbors.
Jake Ferguson.
Right. I mean, this is what I'm talking about. This is it. Instead of, just torturing yourself over Moss versus Brown and the rushing grades and the first down snaps and the first team snaps and all these things, it's like, hey, let's just draft the offenses on the teams that are not investing in the running game at all. They're signaling to us. They're telling us the truth. They can only tell us the truth with their draft picks and their free agent signings and their trades. That's how they tell us the truth. Everything else is a lie. Probably. So just go on that. And that's where it's just bet on the Chargers passing game exceeding expectations. Put it all down on Dak and Lamb. Go get Calvin Ridley. Go get Malik Neighbors. That should be your focus. And that couple situations that you think you can pluck value, especially if the guy is a late ADP, like a Devin Singletary, great. Right? You'd also know Eric Gray is going to be the number one free agent pickup on the waiver wire at some point this year. You know it, I know it, right?
Yeah.
If I was to make a $5 bet, you wouldn't take it because you'd be like, that's definitely going to happen.
That could happen.
Yeah. And then what about Najee Harris versus Jaylen Warren? Do you have a strong feeling on that one? No, right?
Well, I think Warren's better, but Harris is like a magnet for touches. So I usually follow the touches. I have Harris. I had him pretty close, I think, before the hamstring injury. But with the hamstring injury kind of putting a dent in Warren, he looks like he might be back week 1. So he's kind of creeping back up a little bit.
I don't care.
But yeah, it's just, and it's also, again, it's Arthur Smith. Do I want to be a part of this experience?
I think Najee Harris is very draftable because I think he is going to score touchdowns. He's going to get yards, and we're going to hate it. But it's not that different from the Josh Jacobs situation. I mean, he was the next running back to come out after Josh Jacobs from Alabama. And they did have similar profiles. Neither one of them were much for pass catchers. But then when they got to the NFL, suddenly they were catching a lot more passes than they were at Alabama, and they were operating as bell cows. So this is a discount bell cow, a guy that was going first round for many years, right? Season over season, it was Najee in the first round. And why? Touches. Jaylen Warren's still an undrafted free agent, now hurt. So I'm going to follow the touches there. And again, go with that crusty guy that can anchor down a running game, which only if Tank is gone. All these guys have to be gone. And then, okay, once it's all exhausted, but Najee Harris, he's so pukey that in real life, I don't understand his ADP because he always goes later than his ADP in every draft I'm in. Because it's always like, who's going to be the one to draft Najee Harris? And everyone touches their nose and no one's going to do it. And I'll just move in and do it. Just like you with Zeke, me with Harris. Same thing. And so then the bar just keeps getting pushed out. And I think the threshold for me is Ladd McConkey because I really want Ladd McConkey. I really do. I think that's a difference-making wide receiver where we're going to be all slapping our foreheads a couple weeks in being like, wasn't this obvious? They didn't invest a dime in the running game. He's competing with Josh Palmer. It's Justin Herbert. Yes, not 100% with the plantar fasciitis, but still Justin Herbert. I mean, what is Justin Herbert with plantar fasciitis? What is he? Jordan Love? Right? What is he? Trevor Lawrence?
Dak Prescott, maybe.
Yeah. So, bye, Ladd McConkey, right?
I like both McConkey and Palmer at cost. I think they're both.
Yeah.
really appealing. I think Palmer's like one of the best receiver values on the board. Wide receiver 57. He played at like a 1,200-yard pace without Mike Williams last year. But a good route runner. But this is there's so many targets up for grabs. The Chargers lost Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Gerald Everett, Austin Eckler. I mean, these are like the top 4 pass catchers, so people have to step into those roles, and they're not going to be able to run it every down, even if they maybe like to. So, yeah, I think they're both worthwhile. And you got a good quarterback, so it's a really good situation for both of them.
This is what I'm saying. I noticed you recoiled when I mentioned Jordan Love, because you're like, no, Jordan Love's super elite. Don't do that to Jordan Love. That's my guy.
No, he can run. He can run.
Yeah.
That's why I was questioning that. I don't think
recoiled.
Yeah.
Recoiled
is a good word.
Recoiled.
Sure.
Jalen Wright's flashing. Braylon Allen's flashing. So I don't hate all rookies.
Okay.
When it's an obvious place to draft a guy with maximum upside in a great situation with a skill match with the offense he's landed in, like a Jalen Wright, I'm going to do it. It's clear. Like Jalen Wright just needs to be held on to. My advice on people that have Jalen Wright, just don't drop him. If he doesn't get many touches in week 1 or 2, don't drop him. He will be dropped in some leagues. Scoop him up as soon as he's dropped. Braylon Allen could be in a situation where he doesn't get as many red zone touches as you're hoping, and then suddenly he has a 2-touchdown game and everyone's trying to grab him. But like, who are you scared of? Is there anyone you're scared of? Like, you're drafting a guy like Breece Hall, you're drafting a guy like T. Higgins, and it's like, I'm just so terrified of this Yoshivas or Yosivosh, right? So Yoshivos terrifies me. So but I keep drafting Higgins. Braylon Allen terrifies me, but I can't stop drafting Breece Hall. You know what I'm talking about?
So guys this is a very complex question. I have to be high on a guy that I'm drafting and be terrified of his backup.
Is there yes?
Is that that's what you're saying?
You just distilled it. That's exactly what I'm asking. I didn't even know how to ask that question.
Okay. So I would say, let me touch on the Miami backfield. I would recommend Jalen Wright to anybody who drafts, and I'm not a huge handcuffer, but I would recommend Jalen Wright to anyone who drafts Achane or Mostert, because if either one of those guys goes down, you now have proper value to plug right in there in that offense. So I'm just wanted to mention that.
Handcuff exception. Big handcuff exception alert. Typically don't want to do handcuffs except that one situation in Miami.
I would say a player that I'm very high on relative to maybe his ADP, which is a little depressed because they drafted Blake Corum, is Kyren Williams. I think Kyren Williams can still deliver RB1, good RB1. You're reacting. I don't know how you're going to take this, but good solid RB1 production, even if his touches take a dip into the 65% range, which is kind of where I think they'll land. He could still be the RB2, RB3, RB4 this year in that sort of role. But with them drafting Corum, little worried this becomes more of a 60-40, 58-42 or something like that. And now we're looking at, Kyren Williams as a high-end running back 2 instead of, the RB1 level where he's being drafted. So what was all that histrionics that you were doing there? How do you feel about that?
I was worried about this.
Okay.
I was worried. I didn't mention it in the show sheet. I don't think the name Blake Corum is anywhere on this show sheet because I didn't want to know. I didn't want to know what you thought of this. So it's a bit of a bummer, man. It's a bit of a bummer. I'm a big Blake Corum advocate.
Oh, okay.
And I don't think that Kyren Williams is any good.
Oh.
I think that he is a placeholder running back. I think that he is going to be marginalized and be unusable by week 5 because it's just going to be a coming to Jesus for McVay and everyone in Los Angeles that it's the Blake Corum show. They drafted him when they had all these other needs across the roster. They drafted Blake Corum. So to me, it just makes too much sense that the 1,600-yard rusher that also caught 25 passes, who was a team captain, who was a third-round pick, you bring him in to play him. You don't bring him in to sit behind a slow satellite back that isn't as good at catching passes as he was in college and still can't pass block.
That's an interesting take. Number 4 PFF rush grade for Kyren Williams. I'm looking at your site, Player Profiler. Top 10 in juke rate, true yards per carry, evaded tackles, best ball points added. I don't know what, does that matter for me? I don't know. Yards created, number 9. Yards created per touch, 17. Expected points added, 8. Dominator rating, 2. Yeah, I don't like. To me, Kyron's in that same, not quite the same group as Derrick Henry, but he's in that second.
Whoa!
What?
You just mentioned Kyren Williams and Derrick Henry in the same sentence.
Well, they're 2 running backs that are going in the second, third round. I think it's fair to mention them in the same sentence.
The chat is saying that I am going to go down on Blake Corum.
I think you're looking at Kyren as the lead back and Corum as the second back, and I don't think it could be closer than that. But I think he's the number 2 back right now. Kyren was awesome last year.
I know.
Oh,
I think that I think that was a moment in time. And we've seen these moment in time running backs year after year after year. Even in the efficiency metrics, even in the advanced efficiency metrics on Player Profiler, you see these guys with these evaded tackle numbers that get juiced up for reasons that are sometimes beyond their own skills. They're just the situations they were put in. They had defenders on skates because the offensive line was setting them up so well. This is my theory. I'm like I said, this is a dangerous position that I'm in. I feel a lot better about fading Keon Coleman than I do Kyren Williams. But we're going to get into it. I'm going to ask you who you're fading in the top 50, because I'm sure you have some fades in the top 50. And I can't wait to hear about it. And we're gonna get into it after this. Hey, why do we partner with the FFPC? Because they have the widest variety of fantasy football formats, and it's the easiest place to find all types of fantasy football contests in the world. What if you want to play for high stakes? Well, they have a $6 million prize pool with their Fantasy Players Championship. They also have way too early best ball leagues that start in February and Dynasty leagues. They have the closest thing to a liquid market for orphans that there is in all of Dynasty. And the FFPC has sponsored us for half a decade because we are actually delivering information that can help fantasy gamers, and they're generating so much interest and bringing in so many new users, casual users even. The FFPC creates a unique experience where you can both compete against the best and make money. Use promo code UNDERWORLD to get $25 off your first team. $25 off your first team at the FFPC with promo code UNDERWORLD. Go get it! Let's go get it, John. Let's go get it. Rapid fire. I have 10 burning questions for you. 10 burning questions for John Paulsen in rapid fire mode. Got to get him out of here. Which player's ADP has surprised you the most this offseason?
I was just looking at our, and actually his name coming up again, Keon Coleman coming up, plus 50 to 57, moving from April to August, and underdog ADP. Noah Fant moving up 30 picks. These guys are going, kind of going late, so there's lots of room to sort of move around. But I'm not finding myself on the Noah Fant bandwagon.
Right, you're just like, there's already 3 receivers there that are in. As far as we know, Tyler Lockett's going to be ready for week 1. You're drafting Tyler Lockett, right? You think he's a value?
Sure.
Better
sure.
value, Tyler
Yeah,
Lockett or Josh Palmer?
I'm leaning Palmer right now. I love Lockett, but he's a little bit on the decline with JSN there. I don't know. He might end up being the third receiver there.
So true. Okay, who is an under-the-radar rookie you think is going to make an impact that not enough people are talking about? We already talked about Jalen Wright, so everyone knows, hey, we love Jalen Wright. Give us another one.
Tyrone Tracy is interesting. I know he's a little dinged up, but you mentioned Eric Gray. Tracy might end up being the RB2 there. Malik Washington is another interesting one with Odell Beckham. Like, we don't even know what's going on with his injury.
Love this one.
Washington might end up being the number 3 receiver there for Miami. And if there's an injury to the top 2 guys, he could really start to produce.
I love that. Is there any of the elite quarterbacks that you feel are worth drafting in rounds 3 and 4 in a traditional, 12-team managed league?
I don't know how you feel about this, but sometimes I will pull the trigger on an elite quarterback if I'm just disgusted with my options in the particular round, or if it's a big drop off at a certain position, or at both running back and receiver, and I feel I can get the same quality player in the next round. I might pull the trigger on Hurts, and I have Hurts ahead of Allen. So I would say in certain situations, yes, but that's not my plan heading into the draft.
In this deep end invitational that I participated in with Rich Rebar, we talked about, I started, because it's superflex, I started Hurts Barkley. What do you think of the Hurts Barkley stacks?
You should have all the rushing touchdowns in Philly.
Exactly. But then I also drafted Devontae Smith.
Okay.
So I'm with you. I'm in on the Eagles bounce back. I think there's some recency bias and some small sample bias on an 8-game stretch where things just went wrong for a team. It's the NFL. That can happen. Get over it. Draft Jalen Hurts.
And Kellen Moore at OC, I think, helps Jalen Hurts as well.
Bingo.
And Devonta Smith. I mean, that's CeeDee Lamb and Keenan Allen slot position. Last 2 seasons. Monster numbers.
Monster. Devontae Smith. Hey, this is what we're talking about, though. There are so many options in that round 3 to round 5 and 6 at wide receiver. There's so many delicious options where it really does make hero RB Bijan in round 1, Derrick Henry in round 2, very palatable. Or maybe my favorite at the 1-2 turn, if you can go Garrett Wilson, Barkley, you can do that. That's pretty good, right? I mean, who says no to Garrett Wilson, Barkley at the 1-2 turn? Nobody. Who are your guys in the top 50? We know Derek. You just love it. You love it. You love hanging me, right? You like this is like I'm already having a bad show in that I'm just off. I've said some things that were real head scratchers. I've led the witness inappropriately, and then now you're leaving me hanging, and it's just it's fun. It's fun. Everyone in the chat is loving it. I'm seeing a lot of the laughing, crying emojis in the chat because they know what you're doing to me. You're tilting me. And this is a very tilted podcast, as always. I like nothing better. So, okay, Derrick Henry, we know. He's one of your guys in the top 50. Mm-hmm. Do you have another one?
I like Marvin Harrison at that 1-2 turn. Like, I probably would go Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison, and then look at running back later at some of these guys that are available at the 5-6 turn, like James Conner.
Kenneth Walker.
Kenneth Walker is he's being juiced up a little bit now.
He is.
Discussion there.
Those
in Seattle,
days are over.
He's more of a 4th rounder now, I think.
He was right. But in some of these neighborhood leagues, still available there. Still available there. That's what
people are confused by the Kenneth Walker, the third name. They don't recognize. They don't know who that is. I would say
I don't know if it's that. So do you think that he's going to catch more passes? Do you think he's going to go out and catch 50 passes this year? I mean, Josh Jacobs has multiple 50-plus catch seasons on his resume. We know that. Very possible.
I think they're talking about him as more of a pass catcher in that Ryan Grubb offense. Zach Charbonnet Charbonnet is struggling to get healthy. I think we're looking at Walker as a pretty solid. He's one of the first guys I'm looking for after him and Jacobs are the first guys I'm looking for after Pacheco. But I'm usually trying to go like DK Metcalf there in the 4th round. I think he's really undervalued going that late, wide receiver 21 or something like that. For DK, he's finished top 15, top 17 last 2 seasons. Better offense. And then also in the 4th round, I really like Mark Andrews. I think he's probably the best of the early tight ends, the best value of those guys going in the first 4, 5, 6 rounds. Just number 1 option for Lamar Jackson.
No one's allowed to be surprised when the top 3 tight ends in fantasy this year are Kincaid, Pitts, and Andrews.
Not a Laporta guy, huh?
I mean, I liked Laporta last year, but whatever is left over after Amon-Ra eats is what he enjoys, and I don't like that type of situation. If you have to pay up, 3rd round, maybe 4th round, but more likely 3rd round for a tight end, no thank you. Not for me. Who in the top 50 are you outright fading?
I would probably, I'm looking at the list, and I would probably say a lot of those second round receivers, Devontae Adams, Chris Olave, Drake London, just because, and like Nico Collins, just because. I mean, I like them as players, and certain situations are really good, but you're able to get the same sort of value in the 3rd or 4th round. So I think that's a better spot to grab a running back. I think we talked about this due to the drop off at running back from that top 11 to the next group.
I can tell you that I would rather have Rachaad White than DK Metcalf. I know that you would disagree with that perhaps, but remember, DK Metcalf hasn't had a wide receiver 1 season or even a top 20 points per game season since 2020. And his air yards have been a straight line down ever since. I think DK Metcalf's overrated.
Okay. I think the visor, just having guys with visors, like tinted visors, that's extra swag.
It's good analysis.
Definitely bumps up a few points. T. Higgins, he's at 57, but I don't draft him at all.
Yo, see Vosh. There are a few things going to tilt fantasy gamers this year, like Braylon Allen touchdowns, like Greg Dortch targets, Ray Davis high-value touches, right? Other analysts have picked James Cook as a fade, but the Iosivas or Yossi Vosh spike weeks, that's going to tilt people. That's really good because you're going to tilt both the Jamar Chase people potentially. Maybe they both get there, but they're definitely going to be tilting the T. Higgins people. And I got to get you out of here. I know we get caught in these banter moments, and we're supposed to be in rapid fire, John. Give us a middle round receiver with upside that you love that we haven't talked about yet. All right. This might be a little, we talked about a lot of the guys we like in the middle rounds. So I'm just going to throw out Christian Watson.
Yes. If these hamstrings are sorted, which is a big if, he's going to be playing 80% of the snaps, running deep routes with a good quarterback. And they like to target him. So he definitely has upside.
You like Bo Melton in the final rounds in best ball?
Dontavian Wicks, Bo Melton. These are the best wide receiver 4 or wide receiver 5. Wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 in the league, in my opinion. So best ball for sure. Like these guys are going to pop their heads up here and there, but on a weekly basis, it's tough unless there's some injuries to that. I mean, those guys are all going to rotate.
My buddy just finished a draft, and he was the last to draft a tight end, and he ended up with Luke Musgrave.
Okay.
Good pick.
Yeah, I had a little interaction with a beat reporter for the Packers who listed Tucker Kraft first. And I was like, does that mean Tucker Kraft's going to start? And he's like, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. They're both going to play a lot and be used in different ways. So I thought that was interesting because Kraft did play very well when Musgrave was out last year, but Musgrave started the season better. I mean, I think he's got the more draft capital and probably a little more athletic. And
he's healthier.
Yeah, he's
Kraft's
healthier.
been dealing with a number of injuries.
I think he's back though. I think he's back at practice.
I know he's back, but I mean,
well,
there's something
ready
to
to
be
get
said
tilted.
for these Travis Kelce prototypes where they could stay healthy at such a violent position. They just understand the position at a deeper level. And I'm a big mustache fan. I want to take a mustache ride with Luke Musgrave. And again, this show's getting weird, and we're doing mustache rides. It's gotten. I know Tyler. He's firing up the boing boing sound effect. Thank you, Tyler. I appreciate you very much. Okay, give us
Taysom
a truther.
Hill.
The guy. Give us the guy you're not dropping in Dynasty.
The guy I'm not. Well, I don't play Dynasty, so that's a tougher one. If you want me to just, who's my top truther player?
Would you say? How about Bo Melton? Is he? Would you consider your truther for Bo Melton?
Yeah,
or is there someone
sure.
else?
Dontavian Wicks.
Okay,
Like
anyone
those
else
guys
in
are
that
going to
category?
move up.
Maybe just late rounds, last round in best ball type of thing. Final round in underdog.
Well, we've talked about it. It's Josevish.
I love we're both on this guy.
Yeah. Well, this is a Connor Allen special. He's been in my ear about this guy. I was like, well, what about Burton? And he's like, no, he's going to – Andre's starting in the slot.
Nope, no Burton.
How about Josh Downs?
Okay, you're a truther on Josh Downs. My rule of thumb is if you're on the Anthony Richardson, Jonathan Taylor offense and you're not the number one receiver, I'm not interested.
Yeah, I hear that.
It's fine.
Diami Brown.
That's it. Is it that he's the new number 2 in Washington?
He might be.
Diami Brown, truther, John Paulsen. You got to love that.
Sure,
Why target share? I told you love the target share. I told you that's your North Star. The John Paulsen North Star is the target share, so no one's allowed to be surprised when you go Diami Brown as your truther. I'll get you out of here. We made it on time as usual. I made a huge comeback as a podcast host, timed it perfectly. The guest has to get out of here in 60 seconds, and here we go. Give us a bold prediction for 2024.
A bold prediction. Oh, God. Just throw this. Top truther player, give us a bold prediction for 2024. I forgot about this one. Deontay Johnson, top 20 receiver. How about that?
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.